Right, and if you want me to pull up YouTube, just let me know.
We are live.
But
Hello. If
yay.
you're new to this channel, I'm James Craig, a self-published author, and today, oh wow, did I really not keep a copy of Gamma Coin handy? I am a fantastic YouTuber. Okay, so I'm going to use my other book, another of my books, Low Key Connections, as a prop. Uh, I'm going to be editing one of my future manuscripts right now because I got some another editor I met through Twitter. Kind of took a look at it. He had some thoughts. I have some disagreements with his thoughts, but there's some improvements to be made regardless. Even in my own opinion, like things that I think he missed, for example. And it's just kind of like I thought it would be fun. What I'll be working on today is actually book 3 of the Bastion Blackstone series. Book 2, Gamma Coin, is linked in the description, which obviously will also give you book 1, Faceless. Today is going to be the first chapter of the third book, which is Takedown Request. Now, I'm not going to tell you what it's about because that's part of the live experience here. I'm not alone, however. I brought on one of my readers. You want to introduce yourself, Aster?
Hi, I'm Aster. I lurk in the Discord and occasionally help with beta reading.
All right. All right. So, chat, if you're listening and you are having trouble seeing the text or anything like that, just let me know. This is, I think, my first time doing like a live edit. I've done read and reacts before, which is slightly different from needing to see the nitty gritty of the details. So I'm seeing how this goes. Now let me pull up the notes over on a private window. So, chapter 1, for the record, I find it hilarious that I can title every single chapter in a book with the exact date that it happens, and people can still miss like the importance of those dates. And it happens in every it's just a thing readers do.
I will admit I miss that every time,
It,
unless I specifically go back and look.
yeah, it's not something. It's not like I screwed up in this book by making the dates matter. It's every book I've ever read that gives dates of events. I have not actually pieced together the timeline, like proactively. And basically nobody does. It's just a failing. And yet it's really fun to do as a writer because they look back and they see it was in their face the entire time. So, the opening line here is, "From the bottom, the towers of Bastion were like mountains." The comment I got on this was that for an opening line, this qualifier really weakens the sentence. I'd open with something punchier. I completely disagree with getting rid of the qualifier. I think the qualifier is entirely important here because it narrows you in to the character whose perspective you're following, because he is a dude at the bottom of Bastion's social ladder. That's why I lead it to emotionally primed reader with "from the bottom." However, I can do better. I'm going to have to read a few more sentences because I'm going to have to delete quite a few things to do better. So the first paragraph to get through this: "Dark spires of photovoltaic cells with bloated foothills at the base. The lowest 20 floors sprawled into one another, creating an uneven sprawl." And yes, he also commented that you have sprawled sprawl in the same sentence. Of complexes and boulevards with maglev train lines blasting through them. Higher at the 20th floor and again at the 40th and 60th, machines and trams acted as the city's circulatory system. Now, I'm happy with how this gets you into the mindset of this is a science fiction megacity. However, I think I can do better. For the record, Esther, what's your reaction to that as an opening paragraph as I sit here and work through this?
Um, I mean, I did also notice that you did sprawl twice. I don't have too much of a problem with the idea of leading with "from the bottom" because the stratification and the different layers is a big part of your Bastion world, and where people start is important for the story because that determines how they see the world. Um, but yeah, like the photovoltaic and the city circulatory system. My only maybe critique would be you start with a mountain and then you move to a more biological um I'm sorry, it's late. It's Friday. My brain has left. Like
Analogy.
a more biological metaphor, and so you might want to separate those a little bit, if that makes sense. Or like pick one and run with it instead of going from mountains to a living thing in the same paragraph.
All right, so just as compressing like most of that paragraph into two sentences, I think I'm going to switch to Bastion was a city overgrown on itself, spilling out the sides and tumbling to the ground. Shivering spires of photovoltaic cells still struck toward the sky, but beneath the distribution web of the 20th floor was an almost organic heap of structures. It cuts out a good 20% of the words, I think, and creates a much clearer image.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I like that. That's
Uh, here. Okay, that actually makes a significantly stronger opening paragraph because adding on, while autonomous trams and maglev trains could fly from tower to tower in the sky above, the work of traversing the ground floors fell to humans like Clyde. That was a big problem with the initial opening paragraph because it doesn't name the character, which was really stupid that I didn't do that. And this is also giving me a basic hook. This isn't enough to call it a conflict, but he is in a situation where you immediately get told as you're introduced to him that he has a job that he's doing that is not, and you can tell it's not a very pleasant job. And when a reader encounters someone doing an unpleasant job, that is at least a bit of sympathy I'll be getting for the main character here.
yeah.
What do you think? Am I crazy?
Yeah. Maybe or maybe traversing the maze or the labyrinth that was the ground floors. Um, yeah.
Labyrinthing. I like that word.
Yeah. Hmm. It's an excellent word and underused.
It is the kind of word that you can't use enough. Okay. So that does kind of screw up this because the second paragraph was taking the work of introducing Clyde, but that's no longer necessary.
Behold the
So
power of
honestly, I could probably just
editing.
delete that. I've got comments from this editor that let's see here. All right, yeah. So the funny thing is, this is book 3, which made for kind of interesting feedback. So you didn't know like basic assumptions, like you didn't come in knowing that Bastion is an 80-floor megacity.
Mhm.
So when people are talking about the bottom, they're actually talking about a huge area.
Yeah.
Uh, Now this portion that is supposed, what I tried to do with this sentence here. So there was nothing memorable about his job. Not what he carried, agitatsu chocolate bars, nor who the buyer was, some temp worker on the 8th floor. He was the least memorable of all, just a body in a suit listening to his own music. Well, I wanted to have a very heavy repetition of facts to seem like the prose itself was dry. That's just not a good idea.
Yeah.
Like, I think
Yeah.
I achieved exactly what I intended to achieve. I just achieved a bad thing.
So
I came up with this sentence earlier tonight. He was as likely to find a working elevator as he was to clamber up a welded down stepladder. This is actually a detail I've been dying to figure out how to work into the story. Because when the megacity's 80 floors high, people are not going to be going up and down steps. Humans just aren't going to accept that unless they have to. Uh, but I kind of have like the basic assumption of wealth inequality essentially in Bastion, where the tech is only reliable in the upper floors where there's basically
Yeah.
less people. And that's one of the problems with living down at the bottom is you usually can't find an elevator anymore. Like the motors break down, the cables wear out, people break into the shafts, something or another happens, and people get forced into literally needing to use stairs.
Would it make more sense to he was as likely to climb up a welded down stepladder as find a working elevator? So it sounds like the stepladder is the stepladder leads. It's more likely that he's going to be clambering around and climbing things than getting into an
Actually,
elevator.
I actually like what you're saying there, where one is, or changing this to be one is more likely than the other. Uh, I think that's better. Um, Is that too big of a sentence, you think? The former all the more precarious when he had to carry, an armload of Agitatsu chocolate bars to yet another mass-produced apartment block somewhere attached to the serpentine boulevards of the city. That's a huge sentence.
It is.
However, it's a very clear sentence.
I don't hate a huge sentence, although I might say
Editors do.
the
Editors
form.
fucking hate seeing a sentence that takes more than
Well,
2 lines.
I have opinions about editors and how they try to and how they inadvertently strip out authorial voices and take away some of the uniqueness of the person writing because they
Yeah.
have such standards that they try to push everyone into, but that's just me, perhaps.
Um,
Um,
it's very hard to work with an editor because it's kind of a two way lack of trust. The writer has to trust that the advice they're getting from the editor is actually better than their own opinions. By the way, hello Akari, I do see you in the chat there. And the editor has to trust that the author may have actually known what they were doing. Um, I already brought this up to the editor. A lot of his comments he gave me, I feel like he was jumping the gun to complain. And it was just like, oh, here's a simpler way to say this, which fuck simplicity. And he would change the first half of a sentence to what seemed simpler, and then he would have to change the second half because the second half no longer made sense for how the first half was now constructed, according to him. Uh,
mhm,
and when you combine both of those, like they both seemed like step by step improvements, but if you were to do both, you'd have a worse sentence.
mhm.
So if an editor is just going through it, and if they are trying to edit as they go, they're very prone to just making thoughtless corrections that aren't actually corrections. Because usually they're going to be getting really bad writing, and it's not hard to fix really bad writing once you know what you're doing.
And your time is money, so
Right.
reading the whole thing through and then going back through doubles the amount of time you're putting into something. The only thing I have a problem with this is the former, all the more precarious, just feels a little clunky,
Um,
and
a
you
little.
might you might could rephrase it just a little, or the former
You know what?
was made all the more
I
precarious.
don't like, because I want to talk about the fact that sometimes it's an absolute mess getting around. I'm actually going to
Yeah.
reorder this sentence. So
Hmm.
I'm going back to the original order, but
Hmm.
uh, because when this sentence ends with the idea of someone just welded down a piece of aluminum step like ladder, bridging a gap with no safety railing.
Hmm.
Actually, that's actually a hilarious way to connect that.
Okay. Yeah, I think that works.
Okay. So that's actually, I actually want to do a video on my theory of prose, because people like Stephen King convinced an entire generation of writers that the trick to good prose is reducing word count. I truly believe the actual trick is reducing the mental effort of understanding the ideas in the sentence. So often, if you are deleting identifiers in articles, they might be optional, but those articles actually make it easier to skim through the sentence and understand without getting confused. Like specifically when it gets to like direct objects. But you'll notice that's another thing writers like to do is just not use a direct object whenever they can. Um,
Oh, I read a book recently that drove me crazy because I could never tell who was talking or who was doing the action or even who the point of view character was because so much of that information had been stripped out. And when you have two female leads, she does not tell you much.
That's hard.
And it would
I'll say
it would be
you've read
like,
a lot of my manuscripts. I definitely have
mm-hmm,
chapters where I don't know how much to dialogue tag.
mm-hmm. I I have
I've gotten better at
discovered,
it because people used to
yeah,
bitch about it a lot, and I realize how important it is to handle. And that's
yeah,
another example of it's better to have more words than less.
yes. I would absolutely say it's better, even if you only have two people having a conversation, throwing in dialogue tags occasionally just to remind you what order they're going in is a big help. So I don't have to stop and backtrack and like, okay, this. Especially if it's an author who doesn't have two characters that have distinct voices.
Yep.
Like, yeah,
Um,
some characters you can tell who's talking by what they're talking about or how they're saying it, but sometimes, especially if you have two characters that are similar class and a similar, lifestyle and stuff, they will sound the same and it's easy to get lost.
yeah, that was a big problem I had with Ship of Fools because
Mhm.
most of the characters are like explicitly the movers and shakers of society there. Like the most influential people get together, and guess what? A businessman, a ship captain, everyone who are used to commanding people, and they're basically all older men who are highly educated, all from a relatively small community. Actually, they all kind of sounded the same. So the story would have been slightly better if I'd been able to pull them apart and voice a bit more.
Mhm. And it's a hard thing to do, especially in a situation like that where they are going to be very similar. But I always have mad respect when an author does pull it off.
So let's see here. One thing I'm missing from the original draft here is getting into the idea that he's just kind of tuned out. I'm trying to imply he's a little stoned because he's basically working a minimum wage job, and everyone who does these kinds of jobs is listening to music constantly. So I wanted to talk about
Mhm.
the music situation in Bastion, but it's just not connecting right now. I do like this sentence here. Weaving through crowds of shoppers and drinkers was little relief as people continually bumped into him. If I want to get to music, I should just say, nearly. Alright, I can just get rid of that. Because I think I'm giving a much stronger image.
Yeah.
Like previously, what I just deleted was like he was least memorable of all, just a body in a suit listening to his own music. Even when people bumped into him or tried to squeeze him out of a spot on a crowded train, he was gone from their minds the moment he was out of their sight, and he was fine with
Mhm.
that.
I did like that line when I read it.
Maybe I'll bring it back.
Yeah. It's,
Um, I do like the information from of what the music is. I can just reorder the ideas a
mhm.
bit.
Yeah.
Uh, So he drowned it out with a stream of live mixed synth electronica delivered straight to his auditory cortex, which, if I remember correctly, also bugged the shit out of this editor. Oh yeah, this was his first time where it was just like, James, your sentences are too long, even though it's like, what information could I delete from that sentence without screwing up the
Mhm.
sci-fi? Um,
Oh, all right. So this editor would hate me
yeah.
probably. I mean, it's not that I write the purplest prose. It's just that I have a large vocabulary and I need to use as much of it as possible some days. Because
Okay. So I'm bringing that back.
yeah,
Uh,
mhm.
so I bring in the music and I say he ignored the crowd and oops, that's incorrect. And he was gone from their minds the moment he was out of their sight, and he was fine with that. So I brought back that line, if that's a good
Yeah,
line according to the
I
reader.
liked it because it's very much speaks to how everyone's got their neural implants and everyone's kind of in their own little world, and it's that very atomized human that they don't pay any more attention to him than a street lamp or a trash can or something they brush by.
Which I think is literally what people do already.
Yeah, yeah,
UPS drivers go
it's
through
you.
suburbs and cities
Yeah.
constantly. They're probably some of the most foot traffic in any city.
Hmm.
You see the suit
Yeah,
and
well,
you ignore them. They're just part of the
yeah,
background.
this is city life, really. From the few times I've been in cities for long periods of time, but yeah, if you want to, you could even if he wears a uniform to work, his uniform made him invisible. You know, just another drone delivering a package or something.
Is this too much adding this? You know what happens later in the chapter. But I think it's actually kind of important to start foreshadowing things to have like
Mhm.
micro hooks through a chapter. When his uniform made him part of the background, that usually meant he didn't get into trouble.
Mhm.
You know that's foreshadowing,
Yeah.
so it's probably fine.
Mhm.
So as he rounded through one flight of rusted steps after another, he wondered if the DJ was even human or just a corporate-backed piece of machine imitation software. The editor wanted me to delete like every other word in this sentence.
Oh, my suggestion would be just change if instead of the DJ, if this DJ.
That's a weird issue of style for
Mm.
past. Um, I think that's a question of how close to his mind is the POV,
Yeah. Fair enough.
and there isn't exactly a right or wrong answer.
Mhm.
Um, but because Clyde is the POV that doesn't get internal monologue, I think the writing should be slightly more detached than it is in
Yeah.
Elliot's. Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Um,
Gotta be careful. I actually do that.
mhm.
Yeah, the editor said like, "Oh, you don't need to say through." He rounded one flight of rusted steps after another. You don't even need after another. It's totally unnecessary. You don't need, and he was also like, "Oh, well, what you've already said, it's imitation software. You can delete machine.
Mhm.
Obviously, it's a machine doing the imitating."
Yeah.
I'm leaving the sentence the way it is.
Yeah. I would, and I don't have a problem with that either because um you're he's it's a pacing thing. He's not exactly moving super fast, right? He's having to weave through this city and make it through this maze. And I think it's okay if the sentences, kind of mirror that a little bit and you know you have to work through these sort of labyrinthine sentences while he's weaving through the city.
Thank you for appreciating that. So, after almost 16 hours on shift, the idea that he might be indulging the capital property of a trust fund kid, probably all the way up on the 80th floor, made him want to smack the grin off the possibly non existent punk. Which I think is a relatively, maybe it's not the most elegant sentence, but it's necessary context to the fact that he has a rough life and
Mm-hmm.
possibly of his own making. It's the kind of detail that I don't know a better way to get that in. If you have any ideas, chat. If you have any ideas, I am reading chat constantly, if or at least checking chat. But in the interest of keeping things exciting and moving, he didn't have the attention to both search up the DJ's personal information as well as follow the WPS map to his destination, though. The path constantly updated when he had to move so close to the ground floor. That's an ugly ass sentence.
Mm-hmm.
That just needs to be rewritten.
Yeah.
Hello, Dana. Okay, that's a lot better. The map never seemed to know the latest info when he had to move so close to the ground floor. Constantly updating with last minute changes. Last second routes. Bridge connections across train lines are nearly random, and the prefab shanty walls that squatters like to shift around were definitely random. The computer system tried to catalog the labyrinth that was Gamma, but even the government struggled to know who to tax and how much to tax them. Luckily for him, he knew he would eventually be in a sane neighborhood. His company kept their own list of addresses. Anyone in an unregistered domicile would have to go to a postal suite instead. When he found himself in a standardized hall with residential doors evenly spaced, as he at least knew he was delivering to someone with a job, and that meant it was very unlikely he was going to get jumped. Clyde knocked where his map told him to. Candyman's here with the delivery. Actually, I definitely don't need that. Candyman's here. That was actually a critique the editor is right on. Nope, he missed that. Of all the sentences that he said, make this shorter, he missed that.
Mm-hmm.
The music inside, some kind of saxophone rock, paused and he realized the moaning hadn't been recorded. The resident yanked the door open, shirtless and sweaty. He had his hair bleached and standing on end like lightning had struck him. He was as thin as a lightning rod, too. Fuck yes, I forgot I ordered these, he said, reaching for the box. Clyde jerked it back and held out his tablet, thumbprint first. The woman the resident had been having sex with threw herself around him, undressed. Okay, so this is perhaps a warranted question. Do I explicitly say this?
Yeah.
I think the vulgarity is warranted. What do you think?
Um, well, do you, let's see.
I have people in the chat. Let me put up a poll.
Yeah. What do they think? Because,
All right, so I'll come back to that poll result. I'm just gonna go ahead with that going.
you could also do something like a naked woman threw herself around him from behind, nibbling on his ear or something, which would imply it.
That's one way to do it.
Give a strong visual. I think if you want to go a little explicit, then go for it. Don't describe it.
Actually, I can actually be better and slightly more vulgar.
Mm-hmm.
Why does LibreOffice think snuck isn't a real word?
I have no idea.
It must be on like a British dictionary or something. All right, so this is actually shorter, which is incidental.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Dino, I didn't explicitly say that. I just said that the moaning hadn't been recorded.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is actually just a tighter and more imaginative phrase here to say a blonde snuck out of the bedroom and threw her arms around the resident, using his back to cover up. Nuzzling against him, she asked, "What's going on, babe?" I think that's actually a better image, so I guess the poll is defunct.
Yeah.
Alright. Candy, the man said, and stuck his thumb in his mouth. He greased it up with drool and scraped it off on the wall as a means of cleaning it. When he jabbed the touchscreen, the print validated and payment went through. Clyde turned the tablet around and almost gagged. He didn't want to put it back in his pocket, not still dripping with the guy's spit. He couldn't spot a public bathroom from where he was, and he tried to remember if there was one around the corner. He was about to just wipe it off on the side of his denim pants when the couple popped the lid open. By the way, everyone in chat said no. Interesting. If anyone wants to explain their position on why they said no, I'd be interested. The foil wrapped bricks of chocolate didn't lay flat in the box. The girl reached in and ripped one open, devouring it with moans reminiscent of before Clyde had arrived. What laid beneath was the resident's fixation. Why can't I ever spell unlabeled correctly? For some reason, I've actually gotten stupider about when to have double consonants in a word. I used to be perfect at it.
Spell check has made you weak.
I think actually it's auto spell correct. Yeah. That's what a lot of computers have rolled out, specifically in Google Docs. It will automatically fix your typo.
Mm-hmm.
which really
Yeah.
fucking pisses me off when I'm just using an obscure word. Like, I tried to say, was remanded to custody, and they changed it
Mhm.
to was reminded.
Thanks, you helped. Look, I can't tell. My spelling is so bad. I have to Google words to get close enough to the spelling for spell correct to help me.
I've
Some
had to do that a few
days.
times. It took me
Silhouette.
years to learn how to spell silhouette, and I still don't know how to spell. I can just get close enough for spell check now.
Same.
It's a French word, fuck it.
Hmm. Yeah, I finally turned off most of the autocorrects on my phone because it has betrayed me for the last time, and I was sick of it. I was like, fine, I will look like an idiot rather than look like I don't know the right word.
Anyways, thanks for the lift, the guy said. He grinned and slapped his hand on Clyde's elbow before popping the cap off and walking inside. Come on, babe, let me. The girl kicked the door shut with her foot, cutting her sentence off and giving Clyde only a glance at her backside. What the hell, Clyde said. A box of chocolate was one thing to be walking around with, 50 credits worth of goods at most. Drugs were an entirely different realm. They warranted hazard pay, for one thing, and that risk very often was realized. Clyde was a big guy and could take a risk or two, but he wasn't getting paid for risks. Paid for that. The door deadbolt slammed home and he took a few steps back. He gritted his teeth and resolved to take it up with his boss after, I want to say first thing after his shift. Checking the navigation app, it told him to keep walking through to head down 2 flights, across 3 towers, and across 3 towers to meet another coworker for a handoff. Handoff is a word, right? One word?
Yeah.
He was one piece of the machine, like an old German clock dancing in time to pack up at the hour mark. He declined it. Sorry?
All right, so I was gonna say should German be capitalized, but I don't know that I'm looking at your working document. Um,
You'd have to watch the stream to see my working document.
yeah, I'm watching the screen, but it's on my phone, so it's very tiny.
Fair enough.
All right, so one thing I noticed is he resolves to take it up with his boss after his shift, and he gets his next assignment. Then I believe doesn't he decline it so he can go talk to his boss? So you've kind of contradicted yourself a little bit.
Good catch. Okay, that's a problem. Okay, so to correct that, is now going to be changed to the door deadbolt slammed home and he took a few steps back. His navigation app happily chirped about a job well done. It pinged a fresh route to him, asking him to continue through the apartment building. It wanted him to head down 2 flights and across 3 towers so he could meet another coworker for another handoff. It treated him like a dancing puppet in an old German clock. He declined it. The app freaked out, but he submitted an emergency occurrence, and the package he was supposed to get was rerouted somewhere else. He neither knew nor cared as he headed for the nearest train station to head back to the office. I think is significantly better, so thank you.
You're welcome. I'm here to help.
While the station scanned the ID in his jacket, he called up his boss. It went to voicemail and he left a message. I got to report contaminated goods or something like that. This is a talk in person kind of thing, okay? I'm heading back now. If you know what I'm talking about, then you should know I ain't cool with this. A pack of city boarders blasted by him, flying across the maglev rails. They whooped and laughed, snapping pictures or filming, getting their kicks by letting the train nearly nudge them in the back. It scared some of the onlookers and they just hollered loud, and the kids just hollered louder. Clyde Okay, no, that's correct. Clyde watched with impassive eyes. They weren't doing anything he hadn't done when he was their age, and he wasn't impressed. They wanted reactions. They should have been higher up in the city, where the wind was stronger and the people livelier. They were wasting their time as far as he was concerned, or maybe they had just lost a turf war. The important thing was they got out of the way when the train started moving again with him aboard it. The car was packed, but somehow everyone found room to stay away from him. He took his seat on a mid-facing bench, spread his legs, planted his elbows on his knees, and thought about his job. Most distribution in Bastion was done through autonomous shuttles. Door delivery was an added fee because the average walk to a post office took 5 minutes. Of course, plenty of people paid for it regardless. Food was a common need, and finding people carnally engaged was hardly uncommon, especially with chocolate deliveries. He didn't know if that added up to enough money that Ajitatsu was actually profitable, though. He tried to remember how many packages he delivered in a day to average that across how many employees Ajitatsu had in this department. In his department. Oops. Tried to guess the average value of those packages, if they were all legit, and came up severely short of the wages they were paying to do the work. Market share and marketing was hard to quantify, but he couldn't imagine they were losing money on door deliveries. Cash flow was another consideration. Ajitatsu is a food additive company, not a true megacorp. Banks like to see turnover. It had something to do with macroeconomics. In his gut, he could only believe they were doing door deliveries to transport illegal goods, to move them around without Eve getting to scan them directly. Those pills had been opioids. How do you spell? Did I have that spelled correct? Is that how you spell
I think
opioids?
that's right. I think that's how they're spelled.
Oh. Most likely, not many drugs were still prohibited, and he had been complicit in the business. He could only imagine what his mother would say. He couldn't imagine telling her either. Clyde stepped off the train at the bottom of the Ajitatsu Tower. Okay, I'm going to pause. I've had some people say that that passage is weird, like it's unexpectedly insightful for a guy they took to be a schmuck. And I say that's actually the point of the passage, is that he's not an idiot, which is part of why the story is a tragedy. Or do you think this is another case of James can only write highly intelligent characters? Or at least reasonably intelligent?
Isn't that one of the comments I made to you at one point? I know I
I think it
thought
was
it.
you, yeah.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that he's actually aware and competent. Some people find it weird, though.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of the point. It gives depth to the story that way.
Yeah. If you want to balance it a little bit, you can not use the such specialized terms. Like he can still have the understand what's going on, but maybe use different terms for it. But honestly, even like low paid workers um know their little section pretty well.
True.
Like they're part of the job. They understand how things work and it's not
I mean, maybe I could reword this into more of taking a guess about what the sale price is on those chocolates versus how much they're charging minus his hourly wage.
yeah, or he could think about, or draw a parallel to like when he orders stuff. like on a special occasion if he gets
Uh,
something, he knows how much it costs and um so maybe like maybe he couldn't imagine they were making money on door deliveries.
okay, maybe this is better. Clyde could simply look up the sale price of a chocolate bar, and he tried to remember how many bars were in his average delivery, but he could only take a guess at what the production cost of each was. Even his most liberal guess came up short, though. Not just his own wage, but the local warehouses all had rent. Paying it all legit just felt like a stretch. Market share and marketing was hard to quantify, but he couldn't imagine they were losing money on door deliveries. Cash flow was another consideration. Ajitatsu was a food additive. I guess I don't need a M dash. Ajitatsu was a food additive company, not a true megacorp. Banks liked to see turnover, so it had something to do with macroeconomics. In his gut, I guess I actually just don't need that. That's just complicating it now.
Mhm.
In his gut, he could only believe they were doing door deliveries to transport illegal goods, to move them around without Eve getting to scan them. That's many thems.
Maybe you couldn't imagine they were doing door deliveries if they were losing money.
That's good.
But that like that, or they were spending resources on door deliveries if they were losing money.
But he couldn't imagine they would accept losing money on door delivery.
Yeah.
To move them without Eve taking a direct scan, those pills had been opioids, most likely. Not many drugs are still prohibited, and he had been complicit in the business. Yada yada. Okay, I think that's better. Clyde stepped off the train at the bottom of the Ajitatsu Tower. Deep in Mizu, but Gamma was the same everywhere. It was dirty, dark, and full of people he didn't trust. One of those peoples was a city boarder who leapt off the junction line above him without a word. Clyde saw the shadow and jerked his head up. The fiberglass board slammed into his face and snapped his nose. Pain blurred. He hit the ground and the kid landed on top of him. The clench in his chest was all that he could think about. I should probably scroll down and start double checking these edit notes. Okay. Pain blurred. He hit the ground and the kid landed on top of him. The clench in his chest was all he could think about. He couldn't breathe. He was groaning as his senses came back. Blood poured out of his nose and back through to his throat. His first halting breath became a sputtering cough as he threw the SETI boarder off of him. The anti-slip grating dug through his jacket, biting at his flesh as he spat out blood. The grating was vibrating. People were running towards him. The world clicked together and his adrenaline spiked. The kid hadn't fallen. He was mugged. Oh, you quaz-ass mother... Something caught him in the head. Didn't hurt so much as jerk him around and he heard the noise of bone on bone. The next kid fell, whining in pain and clutching his shin. Clyde's nostrils flared as he felt the heat across his scalp. The kids were idiots, too young to know better, but he wasn't going to let them off. The first one, the city boarder, was still scrambling to unbuckle his boots. Every frantic jerk changed the whirring electromagnets. Then Clyde was on him, lurching from the ground up. He grabbed the city boarder by the jacket and hammered a fist down. The kid's mouth was soft and bloody. The third one grabbed him by the foot and jerked him back. Clyde was a big guy. He didn't move much. He rolled, slinging his boot in the newcomer's leg. Hard, but not enough to knock the kid down. The kid who had been kicked... the kid who had kicked him in the head... I'm going to change that to booted him in the head. That should be clearer. Booted him in the head, ran back over, and tried to stomp Clyde. He caught the kid's foot instead, throwing him on his ass. He followed up with a slam of his fist between the kid's legs, very soft. Something wrapped around his throat, firm and covered in plastic. The city boarder's jacketed arm. He could feel bicep and forearm squeezing. Before he could pry it off his throat, the third kid started kicking him in the side. Slam, 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 until his breath was knocked out again. The world went black. Clyde was face down, gasping in breath. That's unnecessary. Gasping. Floor vibrated with pounding feet again. Shit, man, they got your credit chip. The unfamiliar voice brought a pang of panic. Clyde shoved himself up, burning every bruise the kids had given him. His eyes lurched. Kids were nothing more than a blur of multicolored jackets, gone into the city as fast as they had come. Now, I'm actually pretty happy with that fight scene. I think it does a lot of things right for setting up the story. It's a little hectic, a little chaotic, but I don't think you ever get confused about what's going on.
I might agree with the editor. The pain blurred. Give it something to blur.
That's another pull.
I see where you're going, but I don't
Finish
know
that
if it
and
fits
pull
in with the rest of the sentences as well, stylistically. But I mean, again, it's your world, and you get to do what you want.
There it is. Okay. Let me know what you think, chat.
Pull power polls.
If we're doing this live, we might as well have some fun, right?
No, I think it's a great idea. The other thing I would say is his rise lurched.
I like that though, because he's trying to get up and it's just, the leg just doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, maybe Clyde shoved himself up, lurching when his leg buckled.
That slows it down though.
It does, but his rise lurched is also a little passive for an active scene.
Well, intentionally, because it's his action gets interrupted, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'm keeping it. I'm taking the pull. I changed it to pain blurred his vision. The unfamiliar voice brought a pang of panic. Clyde shoved himself up, burning every bruise the kids had given him. His eyes lurched. The kids were nothing more than a blur of multicolored jackets gone into the city as fast as they had come. I guess that's actually that punctuation. Clyde checked his pockets. They'd taken his credit chip and his corporate tablet. At least his phone was still in his jacket. Son of a bitch, he shouted, the noise high and pinched. He stood up and stumbled to a dark window. He scowled and peered at his reflection. Then snapped his nose straight again and sneezed the blood out. 2 dozen people had watched him get mugged. He could see them in the reflection too, how they all just walked away once the show was over. Eve called his phone as he shuffled into a public restroom. Mr. Bondsman, the AI said, her voice calm and compassionate. I'd like to inform you that your mugging was successfully recorded by station security. Their likenesses have been recorded and the information transferred to all local. Please rest assured that they will be brought to justice. Clyde laughed and ran the tap. The water was cool, but his split flesh burned. You need an ambulance. I ain't paying for EMT, he said, toweling off. He looked at himself in the mirror again and watched blood drip from his nose. With a sigh, he got some toilet paper to wad into his to wad up like tampons. He could still feel the trickle of blood down his back. It wetted his jacket and soaked into his t-shirt. Only thing he could do was hold a wad of toilet paper against it. There was an apothecary between the station and the office, so he stopped inside. Liquid bandage was stocked. Gritted his teeth when the checkout machine rang it up at 30 credits. He tried to pay it anyway and then remembered his credit chip had been stolen. He logged in through his neural implant and he had to sort through half a dozen payment reminders just to pay. None of them had overdue fees yet, and his paycheck was processing, so he put them out of mind as he squirted the goo into his hair where it felt tender. Okay, so this one actually bugged me from this editor. He wants me to change this to none of them were overdue yet, which I think is qualitatively different than what I have here. Because I intentionally had none of them had overdue fees yet. Because I don't know about you, I have several monthly bills that you have a 1 week grace period between you are past due and we are penalizing you for having not paid.
Yeah.
And when you get money scarce, you kind of inch over to when the fee shows up.
Maybe none of the overdue fees had hit yet.
I'm not with that one yet. I'm not with you there.
Oh.
Hey, we got 2 votes that time.
Oh.
I ended the poll. Yes, Dino's with me. Overdue and overdue fees are completely different states of mind.
Mm-hmm.
The bleeding stopped as it hardened like a plastic scab. The packaging and the bloody tissue he shoved down a trash chute. He was still itching when he walked into the Ajitatsu break room. To call it an office was a misnomer. There were no desks, no cubicles, or computer stations. There was an assembly room so the staff leaders could prattle on about quarterly targets, as well as lockers and the smell of smoke. No one else was in the office when he arrived. Midnight wasn't a shift change over for anyone, and his boss hadn't responded to the message yet. I took his jacket off and tried to clean it up in the bathroom. Blood had dried all over the collar. The material was stain-proof, but he left it soaking in the sink regardless. His t-shirt was another matter. It was part cotton and had gotten blood down the front and the back. No amount of soap or scrubbing did anything, so he queried Eve ways to remove blood. She provided an article explaining that his saliva could dissolve his own blood, so he tried sucking on a shirt. It tasted like soap, but the blood stain did fade. God damn it, he only had one other t-shirt left at home. After a moment of staring at the pink-tinted water, he put the shirt back on, wet or not, and opened his locker. He had half a dozen dead nicotine vapes rattling around the cubby shelf. Tried each in turn, eventually finding one good battery and one good oil cartridge. Unlike his coworkers, he didn't smoke it in the break room. He stepped out to an obsolete little balcony. It had once been a walkway, but the growth of the tower had cut it off in one direction, and the bridge in the other had been removed for a new train line. The only thing keeping it from being a dead end was a rusted ladder going up, a joke of a fire escape if he had ever seen one. He leaned against the railing, half chewing the vape and half smoking it. See down an alley of the city, hundreds of walkways, dozens of train lines, thousands of people, and every few moments someone went zipping by on a city board. He cranked up some music through his neural implant, switching to metal as he wondered if there was such a thing as too loud for a neural implant. By the way, I'm actually very happy with that paragraph because it very concretely starts putting some numbers on the scale of Bastion for people new to the story. Because he's just like in a bum alley in the middle of nowhere, and he still sees this many connections, right? Mm-hmm. By the way, you did tell me you probably had to step away at 8:30. That's all good if you need to.
Okay. Let me see. I think it is time to tell one of the kiddos good night. So
I understand. I'm gonna probably wrap up this chapter right here on my own. Stream will still be going when you get back, most likely. Anyways, chat, hello. Things are supposed to be different for him. He was a veteran. He had made it, hadn't he? Everyone who did their service and got an honorable discharge was supposed to have life on easy afterwards. They got corporate jobs and moved up through the floors. They merged into the machines of industry and profited from it. They weren't supposed to get the shit kicked out of them by punks. They weren't supposed to be used as drug mules for opioids. Or worse, czar. Clyde was biting the vape so hard his teeth hurt. He could feel the plastic straining, deforming as he stared at the city with glassy eyes. Then someone grabbed him by the shoulder. The fingers dug into his shirt, pushing him forward slightly. Vape flew from his mouth as he spun, adrenaline spiking again. He nailed the guy before he even thought about it, and then he was standing over the crumpled body of Mr. Hill, almost as bloody as Clyde had been and twice as mad. What the fuck, bondsman? You beg for double shifts and then you attack me? What the hell is wrong with you? The older man shouted, covering his bloody mouth as he got back to his feet. It felt like all the energy in Clyde's body knotted together and sank through his gut. He watched Mr. Hill make up his mind even before Clyde said, "That was an accident. Get out!" Chapter end. I'm happy with that as a cliffhanger. That is a good conflict issue to get people to turn the page, I think. So, that is the end of chapter 1, and I need to copy that back into my master document because that is significantly better. So, the four of you who tuned in, what'd you think? Please, comment below both on the chapter and on this format of live stream, and the insight I was able to give, the interaction I was able to offer. What'd you think of this? Should I be doing this again? I'd love to know. It's very good to know that it takes me almost exactly 1 hour to go through one chapter. Dino says do it again. Not tonight. I'm going to go probably play Helldivers or something. It depends on what my friends are playing. Now, unfortunately, I do need to do pre-recorded content because that's where I get my most subscribers, which, by the way, if you're not already subscribed, you should subscribe. I'm trying to get monetized this year so I can do more fun stuff. So I can start justifying increasing production costs.
Like and subscribe.
Dino, format aside, was this a chapter that you would go to the second chapter? If you found this in an Amazon look inside, is this a book you'd pick up if that was the chapter? Oh, which, by the way, I should show this off, a follow-up from a previous live stream. The Land Raider kit bash is almost done. I did a lot of the work off camera, obviously, because I'm going to be playing tomorrow. Swapped that weapon. I'm trying to turn this stuff up here into a flamer setup. I had to get into a state where I could put it on a board, though, and actually use it. So, pretty happy with this Chaos Land Raider. Anyone following the channel lore and all that. I'll take an I might. Frankly, even if you read the best chapters of the best books, a lot of them just don't actually impress. That has to be like the biggest myth about like advice on how to succeed in writing is, oh, your chapter 1 matters so much, and it's just kind of like, actually, almost every chapter 1 sucks. Maybe that's just a personal opinion. But, Aster, thank you very much for coming on. I hope you enjoyed this kind of interaction.
I did. It was really interesting. I'm glad I could help. Hopefully, I helped.
You did. You actually caught several things. Don't forget that.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and I'm glad I managed to wrap this up at 1 hour, which is my usual target. Oh, I should show the book club. Don't forget that this month is Notes from Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Actually really have to read this soon. I've been dawdling with About Face by Colonel Hackworth for way too long. I'll probably pick this up soon. The live stream is going to be 2 weeks from now. Yeah, in 2 weeks. I'll have to pick another book for next month, but book club is always a very fun chat, and I highly encourage everyone reading the book to hang out in the Gilded server and talk with other people reading it. I think I have more often than not chosen a good book. Is my conclusion. I've definitely had a few misses for the book club. I admit that, because I'm not just rereading books I've already read. I'm taking some risks here. Yeah. All right. Chat, thanks for showing up. Esther, thanks for joining me. I'm ending the stream. All right, I have this button. Buy my latest book, Low Key Connections. It's a wonderful portal fantasy about, well, basically friends going on an adventure, simple as. It was a ton of fun to write, and it should be a lot of fun to read. I'd class this over with Infinite Money Glitch. It's not as rip-roaring funny, because it's more of an adventure, but it's still good. I still liked it. Peace.